Welcome back to News in Focus. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, the rest of the show is going to be coming with conversations that are coming from our Cape Town studio. Of course, I had a discussion with the Al Baraka Bank with regards to Wills Week, and I'd like to bring in Whalied Said, who is the director of Said Attorneys, to take this conversation forward. Whalied, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and shukran for making the time for us.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you and all the viewers out there.
Yeah, no, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on, Whalied. I mean, just expanding on the conversation we had with Al Baraka Bank, in your view, how important is not just this week, but the idea of wills in itself and the importance of an individual to really go ahead and make an attempt when it comes to wills?
Okay, so if we're looking at the importance of wills, one has to look at the source, and that is the Quran.
Yes.
Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Baqarah verse 180 gives us an instruction that we need to have a will.
Yeah.
So one cannot argue with that, and one cannot reduce the importance of that. So obviously it's critically important. It's an instruction coming from the Quran, so we don't have a choice about it, if I can put it that way. So yes, critically important. One must have a will.
Yeah, and of course bringing the Sharia compliance aspect to it. From your view, how does Said Attorneys, assist many of the individuals that want to take out a will, but most importantly, a Sharia compliance will?
Okay, so that's obviously very important to a lot of people. How does sort of South African law merge with Sharia law? And one of the key factors to remember there is that South Africa has freedom of testation.
Yes.
So you can draft your will in any which way you want, right? So if I say I want my entire estate to be wound up in terms of Sharia law, then that is how the Master of the High Court will ensure that it is wound up, right? Obviously there's aspects, there's problems that come in when you don't have a will, because now you start falling onto intestate succession laws, and then South African law dictates how your estate must be wound up.
Yeah.
So what we normally do with clients is when we're dealing with an estate and there wasn't a will, for example, then we'll talk to the heirs and say, listen, can't we do this in terms of Sharia first?
Yes.
We can do a redistribution agreement or get the heirs between themselves to understand the importance of winding it up in terms of Sharia so that they actually benefit the deceased parent, and then find a way for them to accomplish that, right? That's always our first point of call in terms of, okay, the will is not Sharia compliant. Do you want to make it Sharia compliant? Obviously, there's ways and means that we can do changes, not that you're changing the will, but as between heirs, you can agree to certain changes in order to make it Sharia compliant. That's how important, or that's the importance that we place on the Sharia compliance of a will, because again, we don't want to go against what the Quran says in terms of what we must do. Obviously, if heirs don't want to do that, then our hands are tied and we have to wind it up in terms of what the will says.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, how do you then, obviously we are living in South Africa, and the law would obviously have its sort of dictating of how will should be done. But of course, the beauty of South Africa is that we are allowed to have, Sharia compliant ways to do things. So when you sit down with a client, you'll obviously point out the many pros that are in Sharia compliance, but also the pros that are there in terms of South African law. So how important are those discussions in trying to advise the clients that here are your options, but there is a Sharia compliant option for you right there?
Yeah, so again, that's always my first point of call, is when we're sitting down with obviously a Muslim client, you speak about a Sharia compliant will and the importance of it. And being in the profession that we are, we see the pitfalls of not having a Sharia compliant will, the fighting, the this, the that.
Yeah.
It's almost as if when you don't follow the rules of Allah, there's consequences. So we can say to people, you know what, if you follow the distribution outlined in the Quran, you'll actually have less problems. Because if you look at all these 105 examples over here, you see the problems that occur. Because ultimately, when you're taking something that is not supposed to be yours, you're consuming haram.
Yeah, of course.
Right? And that in itself has consequences on your rizq and everything that flows with it. So it's obviously very broad. So one has to think about it very carefully, and one has to make that decision very carefully that I want to do this in terms of Sharia. And obviously we explain that to the people and hope that they make the right decisions.
Yeah. Whalied, when looking at the Sharia compliant world, how important is it for the client to understand that you've mentioned it? It's the Holy Quran and it's Hadith that dictates how we should, run our lives, live our lives. How much will that go in settling family disputes? Because when it comes to siblings fighting over, I mean, I can see you smiling because you've dealt with it, Whalied. You've dealt with it. I know of so many families of this happening. How much will that go in just settling it? And what's your risk is your risk. I know it's difficult because people don't want to accept it.
I think that's one of the most difficult things to do is making people understand that. And I often quote, probably Hadith, I often quote that you will not die unless every single morsel of rizq that was ordained for you has come to you.
Yes.
Right? Now, when you understand that, it's easy to walk away from this inheritance because I know I'm not losing 50,000 rand. Allah's still going to give it to me.
Yeah.
I might stop fighting with my brother or my sister here, but Allah will send it to me in a different way.
Sure.
So when you understand things from that perspective, it's easy to let go of why is he getting 2 shares and I'm getting 1 share?
Yeah.
Or why does the wife get that only 1/8 and the husband gets a quarter? All of those things, once you understand the beauty of Allah's decrees and how it actually impacts your life and the role that one plays in respect of the males having to give oversight over to the females in terms of it's their responsibility to look after them, then you understand the value of what you're getting.
Yeah. Whalied, how do we make sure that the inheritance goes to those individuals as per the contract that is signed and also as per that of Sharia law? Because the reason why I'm asking is that we've seen many cases where whether it's spouses, whether it's children not getting the inheritance. And of course, it's a sad reality that we face. But how do you, from a legal standing, what then happens? Because that is really cheating somebody of their risk and of course what has been ordained for them.
That speaks directly to obviously people's ill intentions, right? And I'll just call it straight out fraud.
No, of course,
despite the fact that you can have a proper will or whatever, if I decide I'm going to con my sister, I'm going to con my brother, then I'm going to do it, right? Obviously, the law has its ways and means of dealing with that. So if the will says it's Sharia and I must get this share and that share, but he's ran off with some money or she's ran off with some money. And a common problem that we face is that there's a property, right? One sibling stays in the property, lives there, rent-free, and the others are not getting the inheritance because I don't have anywhere else to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And that is probably one of the most common ways of usurping the wealth of your siblings.
Yeah.
Is by staying in the property. Now, the hard issue there is the executor and the siblings needing to come to the decision that, you know what, you need to be taken out of that property. You need to be evicted. And unfortunately we've had to evict siblings from houses through court orders.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to leave.
Yes.
The estates are not wound up.
Yeah.
Because no, mommy said this or daddy said that. There's no proof of it.
Yeah.
But you can't go on that, right? So if it needs be, you can issue summons, you can do applications to enforce your rights as an heir. But obviously, once you go down that path, whatever bridge that there was between you and a sibling, more often than not gets burnt.
One final question, Whalied, to wrap up this conversation. As you know, we are in World's Week. What would your final advice be to the viewers out there in terms of making sure that a drafting of a will, a finalization of the signatures within a will becomes part and parcel of their lives, because we are not guaranteed to see tomorrow?
Definitely. And I think that's one of the critical issues is, you can get a will off a shelf at whatever store, but if you don't sign it properly, or sometimes you write in a clause that doesn't make sense and the clause becomes nullified. Doesn't necessarily invalidate the entire will, but it might have been something important to you. And that causes a problem. What Wills Week does is it gives you access to attorneys all around the country where you can make an appointment. This is for a basic will. You can't sit there for with an hour consult and things. But they can do a basic will for you. Make sure that you sign it correctly. Make sure that any special clauses, if you owe money to people, write it in. Someone owes you money, put it into your will to say, my brother, my sister, whatever, owes me 50,000 rand. Because then the heirs know exactly what the situation is. Then no one can come afterwards and say, oh no, he owed me money, or I don't owe him anything, I paid it, whatever the case is. So make use of that, because you're getting an opportunity to sit with an attorney free of charge and make sure that your will is done properly, right? You get other organizations and companies, and you get all sorts of people doing wills nowadays. They don't always know what they're doing. Because being an attorney and being just Mr. Joe that's signing wills, they don't necessarily know the legalities of signing here or not signing there. And that can be a problem down the line. You don't want to leave your heirs with problems. You want to leave them with a legacy.
Definitely. Whalied, absolute pleasure having you on. Shukran so much for this discussion. Assalamu alaikum
wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
That is Whalied Said, Director at Said Attorneys. Do stay tuned. We'll have more for you on News in Focus after the break.